Well, next up, here we are. This is what everybody's here for. It's the main event of the show, the 10-man tag team match. Some brief background as we kind of head into this. In the June 23rd edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it was originally reported that Sid was supposed to be a part of this match, teaming with Austin, Shamrock, and the Legion of Doom. However, Goldust winds up getting the spot, and allegedly this takes place because Sid was involved in a car accident with Too Cold Scorpio, Doug Furnace, and Phil LaFawn on June 15th. Do you know that Sid was originally supposed to be here, and that all changed because of the car wreck?
Yes, it did. And there's some suspect at best feelings that softball season started too.
Because the other guys were still were working at that point, and Sid was the only holdout?
Yes.
Okay. During an in-ring promo with the Hart Foundation at King of the Ring the prior month, Bret Hart had challenged the 5 best American wrestlers in the WWF to fight the Hart Foundation at the next month's pay-per-view, which of course is this one. Where did the idea for this match come from? The only match that we normally see like this in the WWF, where it's a big multi-man tag match like this on top, was the Survivor Series, but even by this point, that concept had kind of been faded out. Who pushed for, let's make the Hart Foundation one giant team?
Well, they pretty much were already there, but it was the sentiment that we were getting because we were doing, like I said, we were doing those TVs in Canada. We were getting such a strong feeling for the Harts in Canada, baby faces. It just, another example of just great timing. We're having this pay-per-view coming up in Canada. What better place to let the Canadians stand strong and give Bret and the Hart Foundation a spotlight, put them over here on top, feature them. We knew that they were going to get a great response in Calgary, especially. Jesus Christ, if we had done it in Toronto, it would have been just as big, but Calgary especially. So it was a way to get everybody on, because with the in your house, you're not going to have that 3-hour pay-per-view. So you're cutting out 3 matches off of a show. And this was a way to get a lot of people on the card, get a lot of star power involved in one match.
So the next night on the June 9th Raw, Austin accepts the challenge for the match, and this happens prior to his match with Brian Pillman. But then before that match can take place, the Hart Foundation attacks Austin, which leads to Mankind having to replace him in the match with Pillman. After the match, though, Austin and Shamrock come down to clear the ring of the Hart Foundation, and Austin gives a Stone Cold Stunner to Shamrock. The following week, we see Austin and Pillman finally get that match, and the Hart Foundation members are handcuffed to the ring posts, but they somehow manage to release themselves and attack Austin. This leads to Shamrock, Mankind, and Goldust coming down to make the save, and after a brief brawl between Austin and Shamrock, the LOD come in to break it up, and Goldust suggests that Shamrock, and LOD team up with Austin in the 5-on-5 match at the pay-per-view. So on June 23rd, the LOD and the Godwins have a match, and the LOD, of course, get the victory, and after the match, the Hart Foundation attacks them. On that same show, you see Owen Hart beat Goldust and Hunter Hearst Helmsley by pinning Goldust, and Goldust was originally winning the match by pinning Owen with the curtain call, but the champ had his foot on the bottom rope, and Gorilla Monsoon has to restart the match. June 30th, we have the tag team tournament semifinals, where Owen Hart and Davey Boy Smith defeat the Headbangers after about 4 minutes. And during the match, Bret Hart is called in and discusses his return to the ring Sunday at the Canadian Stampede pay-per-view, and how the opposing team would be treated by the Calgary crowd. And then afterwards, Cornette appears on stage and tells Owen and Davey he had a team that couldn't make the tag tournament but wanted to fight. So he brings out the unintroduced squat team, who brawled with the Headbangers, Owen and Davey, and then Owen and Davey quickly leave the ring, and the Headbangers were laid out by the squat team following a top rope moonsault. And this was Cornette's surprise return after a 6-month absence. What can you tell us about the build for this 10-man tag team match here?
Oh, God. You know, Single episode, if you were to ask Jim Cornette what almost made him retire from wrestling, walk away, and never to be heard from ever again, his answer back then, anyway, would not have been Vince Russo. I think it would have been this one night when he came out to debut what had been billed as this great tag team, super heavyweights that can do everything and do it all, and they're basically a smaller version of Abdullah the Butcher, but they're two of them. They're twins, and they're the greatest workers in the world. They're really good guys, wonderful guys from the Dominican Republic. Spent a lot of time with them in Puerto Rico and in Mexico. Great, great guys. This was the version of a universal fart in church that was heard not just all over the world, but this was heard in galaxies far, far, far fucking away. And the look on Cornette's face when they finally hit the ring, because they were rolling down the ramp, and when they finally hit the ring in slow motion and Davey Boy and Owen had to wait, which felt like 20 minutes for them to get up on their feet, it was horrible. And Cornette came back, and he was just devastated and was like, "God damn, I'll never fucking be able to show my face again. I can't manage these fucking goddamn double-R motherfuckers. What the fuck am I supposed to do? I'm a goddamn manager of motherfucking champions. I actually manage guys that can fucking stand up on their own goddamn 2 feet and have a fucking match. What the fuck am I supposed to do with these goddamn motherfuckers?" And bless their little hearts, they were never to be seen again. It was awful. I don't know if that's anywhere on the network, but folks, that's one worth looking up.
It is. It's on the network.
Oh God.
Yeah. So let me give everybody the marker here to go look for on the network again. It's the June 30th, 1997 edition of Raw. On that same episode, we would see, this is the go-home show now for the pay-per-view, Steve Austin would defeat Jim Neidhart by DQ after about 10 minutes when Bret Hart, who was said to be in Calgary earlier in the show, was now seen attacking Ken Shamrock backstage midway through the match and then attacking Austin. After the match, Bret put Austin in the ring post figure 4 until Mankind came out and applied the mandible claw, and the remainder of the Hart Foundation come down to beat Mankind. Let's kind of talk about hypotheticals, I guess. Why the fuck isn't Mankind in the tag team match? It feels like he's been involved in all the build here. Even the week before on the go home show, when our babyface superhero, Steve Austin, is getting beat up and ganged up on, Mankind is there. Why is he not in the match?
Simply because we had to continue the story with him and Hunter.
Then why put him in this spot, is what I'm saying.
I agree with you, but that's the reason that he wasn't in the match, and just to keep him out there and because he was a big name and continue, but they wanted to keep him in the match with Hunter.
Couldn't that have been one of the Road Warriors or Goldust or anybody else? It feels like this feels like to me, hey, Mankind should be the guy, but we've already got plans for him with Hunter. So we're going to put Goldust in there, but we don't want Goldust to get the rub from being in all the other segments. We don't have as much confidence in him right now as we do Mankind, or else Goldust would be doing this, right?
Probably, yeah. Just it was because Mankind was involved and he was a top guy and they wanted top guys involved in it.
Doesn't it make sense that it would have originally been written for Goldust and then someone in the back says, fuck that, make it Mankind, put Mankind out there instead?
Definitely could have happened, but just, from the standpoint of doing it, it was for star power and felt that Mankind had more star power.
So Bret Hart kind of called the shot here on this show when he calls in and says that, Bret's hometown crowd is going to eat these guys up. Did you guys know that would be the response, or did you think that since Austin was so hot and the Road Warriors were so popular that may not go exactly the way it did with the live crowd?
We were certainly counting on it, and this was another example of kind of preconditioning the crowd to, if they weren't, by Brett saying it, we felt that they would be. But we were sure as hell hoping they were.
So here's another reason that Mankind was involved, and a lot of people will remember this. Mankind was kind of campaigning to be Steve Austin's new tag team partner. Austin and Shawn Michaels had become the tag champs, and they actually wrestled each other as tag champs, but they faced each other at the King of the Ring in '97. But by this point, Michaels is back out with an injury. This is after they do their little hair pulling situation, Brett and Shawn in the back. So the titles are taken off of Austin and Michaels, and this is how the tournament was born, the tournament that Owen and Davey just won. But the plan here is that the winners of the tournament have to face Austin and a partner of his choosing for the tag titles. So Mankind is coming to the ring and making the save with a sign around his neck that says, "Pick me, Steve," which to me seems like the perfect opportunity to insert him into the 10-man tag, but he's programmed with Hunter instead. Any sort of post note you want to put on anything that I just went over there?
No, it just simply was, star power and trying to get through everything with Mankind and Triple H, and then we finally got around to the Dude Love and Steve. But just timing and get through it and do what you can.
So it's time to really do it now. We're going to talk about the match itself, but first, the video package they show is just showing how the gang warfare and the factions have taken over the WWF in 1997. You see the DOA, the Bariquas, all these different guys, and they're doing this to build up an explanation as to, hey, why we need 10 guys here. And before the match starts, we have a 3-woman group called the Farmer's Daughter perform the Canadian national anthem, "Oh Canada." You guys are really hammering home the Canadian pride with this part of the show. And the national anthem has historically been done at the start of the show, but now it's done at the end of the show, right before the main event. Are you doing this to fire up the local crowd and get heat with the people watching at home, or both?
All the above. Holy cow, man. It was the Farmer's Daughter. The other thing that you're going through all that stuff that struck me in the package was all of the factions, and it wasn't an emphasis, but just the inclusion of DOA and the inclusion of the Nation, none of who were involved in this last match. And again, hindsight being 2020, as I'm sitting there watching this going, fuck, it took us forever to get to the Austin Brett story in this package. That was crazy. But no, the national anthem, yeah, let's get them to a frenzy, and this is the main event. Let's go.
Well, let's go to the ring. We see Howard Finkel here with a cowboy hat. Does Finkel own a cowboy hat, or is this a loaner?
He probably does now. Can I keep this, Vince? It would look good in my closet.
They go ahead and introduce some notable figures here ringside, including a Canadian politician, Ralph Klein. He's the premier of the province of Alberta. And, of course, Stu and Helen Hart, who got a huge reaction. We talk about Stu a lot here on the show, but we haven't really talked about Helen a whole lot. Do you have any sort of memories of Helen Hart or angles in particular?
Helen Hart, I think that I'm going to skip to the very end of the show. I think the best line of the entire night was Jerry Lawler when all the Harts were out there, and Jerry Lawler says, "Stu and Helen Hart are responsible for all of this." And it was just so apropos. It was funny, but also apropos. And Helen and Stu Hart met back in Long Island, New York, at the behest of Paul Bosch. Stu and Paul were lifeguards, met Helen, and Paul introduced Stu and Helen. They fell in love and got married and had the Hart clan. But Helen was, she was the matriarch. She was the one that kept it all together through thick and thin, through the ups and the downs, and just personified class. She was old New York money, old New York class. And I think that her family was devastated that she went on to marry this wrestler, Stu Hart. But she was just a class lady, man. I really like the Harts, Stu and Helen.
So let's talk about when we actually get an introduction here for the guys. it's kind of it's really weird to go back and watch this. And I encourage everybody to go watch the main event, if nothing else, because you want to see the introductions and everything here. The LODs come out and get mostly cheers. Shamrock gets more boos than cheers. Goldust is pretty heavily booed, but Austin is booed out of the damn building. So he's got major heat with this Canadian crowd. But then when the baby faces become introduced, man, it is just one after another, louder, louder, louder. When Pillman first comes out as like the home team, the roof blows off the place. It's unbelievable, the response that they get, and it seemingly gets a little bigger with each introduction. This entrance here is one of the more iconic in the history of wrestling. It's a goosebump moment. Were you a gorilla for this? What was the reaction backstage when the crowd is just going bananas for their hometown heroes?
You talk about in the match before with Undertaker and Vader, the camera shaking. The entire building was shaking, and you just felt this huge electricity, man. It was, it's kind of like your home team winning the World Series, and this was just on the entrance. But Brett walking out and that confidence, they loved him. It was true electricity, man. And I was sitting right at Gorilla when they had the entrances, and you get goosebumps. It was truly a goosebump moment. It was a goosebump moment, again, watching it 20 years later on the network.
Let's run through this. We've talked about this being Brett's first match back. This is not just, happy timing that, my knee is miraculously at 100%. And we just so happen to be having a pay-per-view in my hometown. You can tell from watching this, at least in my opinion, Brett's knee is not where it needs to be, but he was not going to miss this show. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that Brett came back. He probably did come back too soon, but yeah, he wasn't about to miss this. This was a great homecoming, and this was a great platform. And we didn't use Brett a lot after this, and he was protected pretty well in this match. Another reason that you got 5-on-5.
Yeah, if you got 10 guys, you can kind of pick your spots, and the pressure won't be as big there. But we start off with Brett and Austin, and this is, the top baby face and the top heel. And in Canada, it's the exact opposite. The heat is incredible. And eventually Neidhart is tagged in, and the place goes nuts with Anvil chants. And they're really hitting a big stride early, and they get the crowd to a huge fevered pitch. And even for little stuff, when Owen makes a comeback with a drop kick and then nips up, it is a huge pop. He goes for a Frankensteiner on Animal, but Animal instead power bombs him and hits a power slam. But somehow Neidhart makes the save. And that's when we start to see the heat start to build. Austin rams Owen's knee into the post and hits the knee with a chair. And the heel heat on Austin here is amazing. The crowd is ready to tear into him. Owen, in return of that, has to be taken to the back, and this makes it 5-on-4. And then Brett starts to ram Austin's knee into the post and uses the figure 4 around the post, which means that Austin has to be taken to the back. So now we've got the odds sort of evened out, both teams down a man. And it was at this point when the crowd starts to settle a little bit, maybe because Austin wasn't involved. Would you agree with that, Bruce?
Exactly. And we kind of wanted to, believe it or not, you wanted the national and worldwide audience not to see Steve booed so much as well. But yes, to get this match, let's settle it down a little bit and let's build to the big return and the big finish. Weren't going to take Brett out of the damn thing, so Owen and Steve were the perfect mix. Which again takes me to the finish. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, we can go ahead and tell the story here. About 21 minutes in, we see Austin return, and he starts working some spots with Brett, going back and forth. Brett actually gets the sharpshooter on, but Animal makes the save, and then Austin puts the sharpshooter on Brett, which is huge heat. But Owen comes limping down from the back for a diving save. Austin will clothesline Owen Hart over the top rope, and at this point, this is where things get fun. Austin starts to go after Stu Hart, who is at ringside with Bruce Hart, still decked out in his 1987 Bad Company leather jacket and sunglasses. and they get involved. It's worth mentioning, before the match started, that the family was acknowledged as being in the front row, especially when Bret put his hitman glasses on his mom. So at this point, you see Austin throw Wayne Hart and BJ Annis, a Hart brother-in-law who wrestled more than a decade for Stampede, over the rail while all of this madness is going on. And then out of nowhere, Austin is pinned with a schoolboy. After all this craziness, Owen rolls him up, and that's it. The wrestlers and family members continue to brawl until the Keystone Cops come out and break things up. And then they have this huge Hart family celebration in the ring, and Austin comes back and hits Neidhart with a chair before half the family jumps him again, including Bruce, before the cops cuff him and take him out. On his way out, with the cuffs on, he bends over and flips the crowd off on the way out, which was just awesome. A super heel performance by Austin here, and just an incredible spectacle to see. And, of course, the show goes off the air with the entire Hart family, all the kids, the grandkids, Stu and Helen, a huge ovation. The dirt sheets gave it 4.25 stars. I don't know how this isn't 5 stars just based on crowd reaction alone. Owen was positioned to be the hero of the match, you know, having to leave with a knee injury, but then coming back to make the save for the family, and then doing the roll-up here. And, of course, we know that would lead to the match that we would see at SummerSlam, the Kiss My Ass Intercontinental title match that we would see 1 month later at SummerSlam 97. Bruce, one of the best moments in WWF history here. What do you remember about this main event?
You know, everybody was waiting for the Harts to get involved and for that explosion. You know, what was going to be the spark that was going to ignite that explosion. And if you can imagine trying to put a match together with 10 guys and 10 personalities that are involved in that type of a match, that in and of itself is a nightmare. You add to that trying to work in a spot with a ton of family members, some who have never worked, some who worked many, many years ago, some who are still working and feel that they're a big star, and then 2 elderly people right in the middle of it that it all has to be centered around. And your nightmare all of a sudden becomes complicated by about 100-fold. So kudos to Pat Patterson for being able to put it all together and manage all of the personalities and be able to calm the family members down, because each family member wanted to have their spot.
Let me ask you this. This was on the Wrestling with Shadows documentary. They were there filming kind of backstage before this show happened, and that's actually included. Parts of this match are included on that DVD. I bring it up because it's positioned, or it looks at least there, and you never know with wrestling how much is work and how much isn't, that whole adding all the family and getting all of them involved was added the day of, when Bret and McMahon are talking about the fact that they're all there. And then you see Bret talking with Bruce and another brother and talking to Pat Patterson and kind of laying it all out. And then they even have a commentary on here with you, Bret, and Patterson's voices heard as y'all are explaining what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. And it's kind of the voiceover for when they show us what really happened. Any memories of filming this documentary during this time? Is that something that was added at the last minute, or was that all just to put on for the documentary?
Well, probably most of it was a put on for the documentary. As far as laying out exactly what was going to happen with the family, yeah, that happened that day. As far as the actual logistics, we knew they were all going to be there, and we told Pat ahead of time, you need to be thinking about how we can involve the family and how we can do something with them for the finish of this match and get everybody involved and kind of spotlighted. As you got into it, because we had already been through the whole Hart's feuding with all the brothers before the Survivor Series prior to this, so we kind of knew, you got a lot of personalities and a lot of stuff to work with here. But, of course, Bruce, and I like Bruce Hart, but Bruce wanted to, he wanted to be the center of it, didn't want anybody touching his dad, and was very protective and felt that he he should be the one to get involved. Bruce felt he should have been in the damn match. But so Bruce, of course, had to be the one to throw the drink on Austin. And if you go back and you look and you watch the finish of that match and when everybody's involved, man, Bruce has to go after everybody. And you see a point where Shamrock gets a little frustrated with Bruce, and you see a point where Hawk actually gets pretty damn frustrated with Bruce because he's not selling and he won't let go. And here are these guys that we've got to make money with week in and week out, and nobody knows who Bruce Hart is on a worldwide audience. And this guy's trying to take down Ken Shamrock and trying to take down the Road Warrior. So it was complicated at best. And then Smith wants to get involved in it, and Smith was, they're not the best, and they all wanted to look good. None of them wanted to sell for the baby faces. None of them wanted to sell for Austin or Shamrock or anybody. So that kind of presented a problem in and of itself. Hence, you do the fast finish inside the ring with the roll-up, the 1, 2, 3. Owen gets one on Austin. And then you have the big brawl, and that's all people are going to remember at the end of the day. And then Steve coming back out at the end, and Steve wanted to kill some people because he's down there. And we did have legitimate Barney Fifes out there that looked like. Did you see the cops?
Yeah.
They looked, the one guy looked just like Barney Fife. And they're out there and they're trying to handcuff Steve and all this shit. And the Hearts are still beating on him. And Steve's unprotected as hell. And he wasn't real happy about that. But just trying to get them all out there. And then they filled the ring. And you see Owen and his kids in the ring. And Brett and all of his kids. And every one of the grandkids coming up and paying their respects to Stu and Helen. And Lawler's classic line that Stu and Helen are responsible for everything in that ring right there. And it was true. It was true. But it was a great feel-good live event. And I think for the international audience and that global audience, I think that they still saw their heroes as their heroes and still saw Brett and the Hearts as kind of bitter Canadians.